what's the most common misconceptions that investors have about cancer vaccines?
That actually they have never worked. Our approach now is totally different. The target is a specific individualized target that is a significant difference from what has been done in the past.
I'm curious on the head and neck. What's your differentiation there?
In the early setting, essentially the innovation comes from a checkpoint inhibitor. In the absence of a checkpoint inhibitor, we are able to, again, delay the recurrence. Our approach can be the next innovation in this field. As a CEO of a biotech company, you are doing everything. At Novartis or at Gilead, where actually I was in charge of one function, and it's very rewarding. I'm learning every single day a lot.
Bienvenue to a new episode. I'm your host, Philip, and on the Flot.bio show, I'm interviewing the best Europeans in biotech to help you grow. Solid tumors present a big challenge for immunotherapy, but cancer vaccines could help significantly. Transgene is one of the leading biotech in the space. So I caught up with Transgene CEO Alessandro while in Paris. I didn't know him personally, but I've known Transgene for over a decade. We talked about the potential and challenges of cancer vaccine. We also discussed Transgene's recent 105 million euros fundraising and why looking at the big picture for patients matters a lot. For transparency, this episode has been sponsored by Transgene. So here's my conversation with Alessandro, and please hit the like and follow button if you're enjoying it. All right, welcome to the show, Alessandro.
Welcome to Paris, Philip.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First record of the year, just 5 days into the new year.
That's it. Yeah, that's correct.
So I want to start with basically the story of Transgene until you joined in 2023. So I think the company has quite a rich story. It was founded in 1979, or at least
that's correct.
Quite a while, and was financed mostly by the Merier family. So could you just walk through the big milestones until today?
But actually, Transgene, as you say, was founded almost 40 years ago. And in terms of, milestones, I would say that, the company was able to build up a very strong know-how in vectorology and in integration of payloads into the vectors. So they went through different, reiteration and permutations of drug development, from infectious disease to oncology. And essentially in oncology, they focus on, the off-the-shelf neoantigens. So now since I joined the company, we have changed significantly, the portfolio of the organization. And actually we have leveraged the significant know-how on vectorology and also the evolving knowledge in the field of immune oncology, and specifically the individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine. And we have, started to develop what we consider to be today a potential next generation of immune oncology based on the know-how that Transgene built up during the last, I would say, 40 years. So as you know, it's not very easy, to have the expertise in vectorology and the expertise in integrating whatever you want to integrate into the viral vector. Now, I think that Transgene is one of the most significant company in vectorology based on virus.
Yeah, cool. I actually visited the office of Transgene in Strasbourg.
In downtown.
In the Yescarta, in the biotech.
Because Transgene started in Strasbourg downtown.
Okay.
And then we moved to Yescarta, where now we're based, and we have full manufacturing facilities, full research facility, full development facility, and we have around 160 people that are based in Yescarta. That is just 10 minutes, driving from Strasbourg.
Yeah, I actually visited in 2013. Basically, when I started my first company, and so I remember really quite impressive GMP. The whole facility was pretty impressive at the time. Can you talk a bit on the platform itself? I mean, and how do you differentiate with existing oncolytic viruses and what's coming in development?
So we have two platforms.
Yeah.
So the first one is what we call the myvac platform. That is not an oncolytic virus, but it is an individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine platform. So that's the myvac. And then we have the oncolytic virus platform that is significantly different from the myvac. Yes. So perhaps
Envir is the second.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So starting from perhaps myvac, yes. Right? So what we do actually with this platform is to prepare a vaccine that is specific to certain mutations that the patient has in his or her tumor. And then, we integrate these mutations into a viral vector, and ultimately we administer, the vaccine to the patient. The objective and the scope being to induce an immunoresponse against the predefined neoantigens that are the mutations against those mutations that are present anti-tumor. So that's the myvac platform. So it's rather complicated, but we can enter into details later on. And then we have the oncolytic virus platform that essentially is based on the capacity of certain virus that we have engineered to recognize the tumor cells and to replicate into the tumor cells. And by replicating, they can kill the tumor cell and also liberating certain payload proteins that we integrated into the virus that are very useful in terms of further enhancing the killing of the tumor cell. So there are two different platforms with ultimately a kind of unique objective that is stimulate the immune response against the tumor. So throughout two different approaches.
Yeah. Okay, and because on cancer vaccine as well, I remember, there's been quite a lot of hopes. There's been some setbacks as well.
So, that's what I was referring at the beginning, discussing very briefly on transgene background. So, you are referring to what we call the off-the-shelf therapeutic vaccines. In other words, there are vaccines that have been built up against targets that are present across the patients or in a subgroup of patients, but are not specific to one individual patient. So this type of off-the-shelf vaccine so far have not yet demonstrated the impact in terms of killing the tumor and ultimately prolonging the progression-free survival and the survival in patients. On the other hand, the new chapter of therapeutic vaccine based on individualized mutations, not kind of shared mutations, but individualized mutations. So those vaccines start to demonstrate that could have a significant impact in the treatment of cancer patients, solid tumor cancer patients, and specifically in the treatment of early setting cancer patients, where we think that the immune system of the patient is more prone, right? So to be activated throughout the vaccine. So I would say this new generation of individualized neoantigen because it's based on a specific mutation, therapeutic because actually, the objective is to cure and not to prevent vaccine. So this new generation, is starting to demonstrate very interesting data. So, for example, Transgene, right? So I just presented at the American Society of Clinical Oncology a randomized phase 1 study in early setting head and neck cancer patients, showing that, patients that received our vaccine after the standard therapy, those patients did not experience any relapses, despite the fact that we have already 30 months median follow-up, and all patients have been followed for at least 2 years. On the other hand, the patients that did not receive the vaccine, remember this is a randomized trial, so we have observed already 3 relapses among the 16 patients that we have randomized. So this is an important proof of principle for us. So first of all, of course, is in a randomized setting, is in a tumor that is, very kind of cold from an immunoresponse point of view and from an immunological feature point of view. This is a tumor where the lymphocyte, the T lymphocytes, do not penetrate very well. Therefore, the tumor is not very prone to have
is a very challenging tumor.
Very challenging tumor. Right? Yeah. So, despite that, right? So we are observed in this kind of small sample size, 32 patients, 16 and 16. Yeah. But in a randomized phase 1 study, that there is a proof of principle. In addition, beyond the efficacy data that we showed at ASCO, we have also showed at the SITC conference, the Society for Immuno-Oncology of Cancer, that the patients develop a specific immune response against the predefined neoantigen that we have integrated into the viral vector. So we have demonstrated that in more than 70% of patients, there is a de novo immunogenic response. We have also showed that this immunogenic response, lasts over time. So we have a follow-up of 2 years, and we are showing that after 2 years, they are still the T cell against the predefined neoantigen that are present, which is also very important. And also we have characterized the immunophenotype of these T cells, and we have seen that these T cells are what we call a effector. So they are cells that T cells that can maintain the memory of what they have seen in their journey. In this case, of course, we are talking about the predefined neoantigen that we have assessed in the tumor. So this is for us a proof of principle from a clinical point of view, where we show that there are no relapses in patients treated with the vaccine, and also from an immunological point of view, because we are showing that we have a profound immune response against the predefined neoantigen. So now what we are doing is to continue the development in a randomized phase 2 study. So we are very close to complete the phase 2 part of the randomized trial, and we expect to do it in this quarter in 2026. And at the end of the day, by
finish the enrollment.
Yes, additional enrollment. So remember, we recruited 32 patients into the randomized phase 1 study, and we plan to recruit around 40 patients in the randomized 2 study. And then we are going to analyze, the 2 patient population together, so the 32 and the 40. So we're going to have around 70, 72-ish, patients that will represent for us a potential proof of concept. Yes. Because, of course, the patient population is larger. We are going to address also the heterogeneity of the tumor, and hopefully we're going to confirm in a larger sample size what we have observed in the phase 1 study.
Okay, that's cool. I'm curious, and I want to switch to the finance afterwards, but
right.
Still on this, how do you differentiate? Because I think on the cancer vaccines, how do you look at your closest competitors? And is it another head and neck therapy, or is it you're comparing to other cancer vaccines? I know, like for Moderna has a one for the advanced one, so BioNTech has a few as well.
So I would say the field started to be very interesting. Right? So of course we are not the only one working in the individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine, and essentially, there are companies that are working with a vector that is based on mRNA, like Moderna and BioNTech. There are companies that are working with a vector based on DNA, like, for example, Evaxion. And there are companies working on the viral vector, like Transgene. And we say that, from a viral vector point of view, Transgene is the most advanced one. So we are the only one being in randomized phase 1, now in randomized phase 2, etc. So the first differentiation, I would say, from a biotech, I prefer say biotech than competitors, because we're all together against cancer, right? So and we respect each other, by the way. And I think that each company, brings some specificity and some innovation. And the field, this field is so complex, complicated, that we need different players. So But I think that the first differentiation really is around the vector.
Yes.
So, we can discuss forever whether it's better to have a viral vector or an mRNA vector or a DNA vector. Certainly, what we can say is that the data coming from Transgene, as I mentioned, is rather, let's say, more than positive. The data coming from Moderna in the randomized phase 2 study in melanoma, not in the neck, is positive.
Yeah.
And the data coming from BioNTech in pancreatic cancer, although BioNTech did not do a randomized trial, but when you look at the data and you compare their data with the literature, the data looks promising. So what we can say is that this type of approach across different vector is working. Yeah. The field start to be de-risked, right? So Transgene differentiate versus, I would say, Moderna and BioNTech, and also the other Evaxion and other companies, because the vector, because the indication. So we are the only one in this space working in the head and neck, and of course we decided to move to head and neck because at that time there was a significant medical need. Immuno-oncology, immunotherapy did not work very well, right? So, and we took the challenge, right? So to test this approach in this type of patient population. So we are the only one, in the head and neck indication. That is also a differentiation. And the third aspect is that we have a specific, algorithm based on artificial intelligence, machine learning, that is, by design different from Moderna and from BioNTech and from other companies. So these are the three differentiation factors. And I say, ultimately what is important is to advance together this field, because, the upside of this therapy, if it continues to show positive data, is that it can be valid for all early setting solid tumor patients. So you can imagine that you cannot have only one company serving the needs of all community from a solid tumor point of view. So if this field continues to be de-risked, and if we have more and more the evidence that this approach actually is transformative for patients in early setting solid tumor in terms of delaying or avoiding the relapse after the standard therapy, you can imagine that we are introducing a new generation of immunotherapy, and also we are introducing a significant kind of response to a medical need, and therefore multiple players are more than welcome. Right.
That's good. I'm curious also on because I was about to say on the bioinformatic, or let's say AI part of the and which kind of neoantigens to select. I was wondering how important is that? I think this is very important compared to which vector you use. Because at the end of the day, if you have the right neoantigens, I guess the vector it plays a role, but maybe a less significant role. And I also know that mRNA is very quick to generate.
Right.
So I can imagine also if you want to personalize, you can have a very quick cycle also to generate the mRNA and deliver it to patients versus a virus.
Right. So of course, and I agree that the identification of the neoantigen, in the tumor of the patients is critical to determine the success of the therapy. And as I mentioned, different companies are using different technologies to do that, right? So, and because this type of approach is covered by the trace secrecy, we don't have access to what Moderna is doing, to what BioNTech is doing, and they don't have access to what we are doing. So it's difficult to elaborate on the differentiation, right? So, but certainly, what we know is that at the end of the day, all these companies are able, to stimulate the immune system against the predefined neoantigen that they have determined based on their own approach, as we have done and also as we have demonstrated. I also think that the vector And the way you integrate these proteins, these neoantigen, into the vector can be also important in terms of the potency of the immune response, but also I would say more importantly, the durability of this response, and also the type of immune response that you induce into the patient. So of course the jury is still out. Of course, more data will exactly. Okay, yes. But I would say that it is a kind of combination of the vector and the platform, based on artificial intelligence and machine learning that makes the difference, right? So, and again, more data will tell us, whether everything is similar, is identical, or there is a potential differentiation. But Philip, even in the worst case scenario, and I would like to come back to what I was saying, a few minutes ago, even if all these platforms are kind of similar, again, the medical need will be significant. Take the example of checkpoint inhibitors. Of course, you're following, this field. Yes. So look at the number of companies that have developed checkpoint inhibitors, and those checkpoint inhibitors available to patients. And you see that, there is a business case for all these companies. This is the worst case scenario. Yeah. Of course, the best case scenario is that there is a differentiation. And it's what we believe and it's what we are creating. And therefore, around this differentiation, there will be, prioritization in terms of prescription of, this type of approaches for patients. Yeah. Right?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. And curious on the head and neck, where you differentiate on the head and neck, because there's a few companies working there, but at the same time, what I see is that it's a very, very tricky cancer to treat. I don't know exactly which specific. I guess there's many specific head and necks as well. But are you like how do you what's your differentiation there, or what are you competing against directly? Is it new treatment, or you are really working in combination for the relapse?
Yeah. So, it depends on whether we talk about, the early setting at the neck, we're talking about squamous cell at the neck, or the advanced metastatic setting. So, let's say focus for a second on the early setting, because that's our area, but we can also discuss the metastatic, right? So in the early setting, essentially the innovation, comes from a checkpoint inhibitor, right? So, the standard therapy up until last year was, surgery for patients that are amenable to surgery, followed by radiotherapy and chemotherapy. And just recently, last year in 2025, 2 large phase 3 trials showed that the addition of a checkpoint inhibitor, Pembro and Nivo, is able to prolong the disease-free survival in operable squamous head and neck cancer patients. So in our study, we show independently of the addition of checkpoint inhibitor. Remember, we started the trial before. We knew about the efficacy of checkpoint inhibitor. So in our trial, we are showing that in the absence of a checkpoint inhibitor, we are able to, again, delay the recurrence. So as you can imagine, the potential next step, is to combine, the two approaches, the checkpoint inhibitor with a vaccine, an individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine. That's what we are discussing, with a network of investigators in Europe and United States of America. The objective being to find the best trial design, given the innovation that is occurring in head and neck, to prepare, a potential pivotal phase 3 trial for our vaccine in head and neck indication. So I would say that, in a short term, after checkpoint inhibitor, our approach can be the next innovation in this field, and talk about the early setting. Then if you go to the metastatic setting, essentially what is interesting, of course, checkpoint inhibitors plays a role, although it's not very significant, right, unfortunately. But what we are seeing, specifically after ASCO and the ACR last year in 2025, that they are the bispecific approach that start to be very important for the treatment of advanced head and neck cancer patients. So, of course, the next step would be to see how this company developing bispecific in metastatic setting will, translate the knowledge into the early setting, and then of course we will have to adapt accordingly. So that's a little bit in a nutshell the landscape of innovation for head and neck cancer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And talking about more the financial side, I saw that you very nice round, or you raised 105 billion, I think, in euros in November. I think a big part was still coming from the Mérieux Foundation,
right,
but some of it also from the public markets. Can you talk about that as well, of how I don't know, easy it's never easy, but how did it go, and what will it finance?
So as you know, I mean, it's never easy to raise funds, and specifically in the context that is ours for biotech, in Europe, but also in the United States of America. And of course, we are in a kind of unique situation because we have Mérieux Institute that owns the majority of the company. And when we started the fundraising, they were owning 68% of the company, right? So, what was easy in this kind of challenging contest, essentially was the fact that, we had a very strong data, right? So, on TG4050 coming from my platform in head and neck cancer, phase 1 data, the phase 2 study that was very well advanced, and as I say, is planned to be completed in this quarter, and also the fact that we were able to clearly spell out the next steps and the next catalyst for Transgene around specifically myvac and around the individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine. So I think that this is something that was very important for us to establish I would say good dialogue with investors beyond our major investor, Mérieux Institute. By the way, we had also to convince them, right? So because they are investors, right? So and then we went through the process, right? So to discuss with them, to have meetings with them, and of course to have them on board, for the next steps of our plan and our organization. But then what was good also is that this kind of story that we build up and the next catalyst, enable us to meet with the main investors, right? So in Europe and the United States of America, and to create the exposure, right? So that for us, I would say, is important, will remain important moving forward. So at the end of the day, we succeeded to raise, as you say, the 105 million euros, which for us, represented a good signal that there are external investors that start to kind of understand our story in a short term, but more importantly, because that's is what we do. We work for the long term. The next step for our organization. So 105 million will give us the coverage from a financial point of view until the first quarter 2028, and with that we will be able to accelerate significantly the myvac program, TG4050, the vaccine that is now in head and neck, but also a new program that we will announce very soon in a different indication from head and neck, right? So it's an indication that we think being very important to have this proof of concept that an individualized therapy is not only for one indication, but can work across the early setting. And we have chosen an indication that is significantly different from a biological point of view from head and neck, and we will announce the indication this year.
Okay, that's cool. is convincing to other investors. Well, I guess the platform is, as you present from the beginning, there was a lot of investing into the platform itself. And there's a lot of know-how and value.
So that's, you cannot build up an individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine company from scratch.
Yeah.
You need to have some know-how. Moderna, as you know, has the know-how. BioNTech, better than me. Right? So, and other companies that are in this field as a kind of long investment, before getting to patients. Yeah. So, and as I said at the beginning, right? So we have been able to leverage. So that's the beauty, right? So the leverage, the know-how, the expertise, etc., around the viral vector, integration of payload into the vector, and really, refocus the organization, on a field that can be transformative. Yeah. So that's this profound interest that all scientists in our company, has, that I have, right? So because again, it's an individualized approach. We are just, assessing what the patient has from a cancer mutation point of view, and around that we are building up medicine. Yeah. So it's like you follow the CAR T therapy, in hematological malignancies. So I've been involved at Novartis and Gilead, right? So it's a very similar model. Of course, we are in a different disease, different technology, but it is an individualized approach, which could make the difference. In hematological malignancies, CAR T is making a profound difference. At the ASH meeting just a few weeks ago in December, I saw clearly, companies and physicians have demonstrated that, specifically multiple myeloma, this type of approach can be really transformative.
Yeah. Actually, I had Pascal Touchon.
Of course.
Novartis. I recorded an episode with him 2 weeks ago.
So. We worked together.
We talked quite a lot about cell therapy, right? And it's pretty impressive. It's very impressive. Okay, cool. And then you said you're financed until Q1 2028, and the milestones, I guess, the enrollment is now. And what are the other major catalyst expected?
So essentially for MyVac, we wanted to complete the randomized phase 2 in the neck. We plan to deliver the immunogenicity data of the randomized phase 2 by the end of this year. Okay. We plan to deliver the efficacy data in terms of relapses, disease-free survival, by the end of 27, beginning of 28. So in that window that is covered by the fundraising. We're going to initiate a new trial in a new indication, and we are going to show the immunogenicity data in that new indication. The efficacy data will occur after 2028, and we're going to continue to update the community on the randomized phase 1 study. So, and we are going to deliver the 3 years follow-up data during the second semester 2026 and the 4 years during the second semester 2027. So that's essentially, the main catalyst. In parallel, we are preparing the organization to run a pivotal phase 3 trial. So what does it mean?
If the efficacy is positive,
if we confirm everything. So we would like to be ready to start a phase 3 trial. So in order to do that, of course, we need to make sure that the manufacturing is ready, for a phase 3 trial. So we are now discussing with the health authorities, to make sure that we implement everything that is needed to be on the starting block, to start the phase 3 trial from a production point of view. As you know, we are already producing the individualized neoantigen therapeutic vaccine, but when you go to a phase 3, of course, the situation starts to be a little bit different. So we need to be prepared. So, and we are, so this 105 million euros, are also very useful for us to prepare all the manufacturing for the phase 3 study. And in parallel, as I mentioned, we are discussing with the health authorities, and also we will discuss with the health authorities, and we are now preparing with the investigators, the phase 3 trial. So we would like to prepare the organization for the next step. This is also a major catalyst for us because, assuming that we have a positive phase 2 data, and everything goes to the right direction, that we also, start to show that our approach is working in another indication. Everything, of course, will be ready then for an acceleration towards a phase 3 trial.
Okay, yeah, got it. And from my understanding as well, on the platforms, you focus really on the neoantigen, the cancer vaccine, more than the oncolytic virus.
Yeah. So, because we cannot do everything, right? So, however, for the oncolytic virus, we still continue the development, right? So, of our, BT001, that is an oncolytic virus with, 2 payloads in there, that are the CTL4 and the GM-CSF. So this, the name of the virus, the oncolytic virus is BT001, is co-developed with BioInvent. Yeah. So, and, it's a kind of 50-50 collaboration. And based on the phase 1 study data that we have presented at ESMO just last year in Berlin. So we have decided, to allow. Yes, thanks. We decided to allow an investigator that reach out to us, to run what we call an investigator-sponsored trial in a specific indication that we cannot disclose. We will disclose it very soon this year.
Okay. And I'm curious maybe to wrap up on Transgene as well. What's the mid/longer term vision or end goal of the company? Is there, are you keeping all the options open, like running the phase 3, maybe commercializing one day, or is it more exit, maybe you're from financing for 40 years? Okay, maybe exit is also good, or what do you
Philip, I think that, being a CEO of a biotech company, so our priority, I believe, is to create value, right? So, and then, of course, by creating value, you create interest, right? So in the community, in the pharmaceutical companies, and then, you're open to potential opportunities, right? So, of course, the dream that I have as a CEO, right, so is to see Transgene launching, myvac in head and neck in Europe. We are a European company, of course. We are proud to be a European biotech, right? So, and that's a dream, right? So, and that's what I would like to keep. However, I'm very realistic, right? So that, a phase 3 trial will require a significant investment. So, and of course, having a pharmaceutical company, collaborating with us, and we have to define the modality, right? So will be perhaps the best case scenario to continue to accelerate our program. So what is important for us is to continue to create value, to prepare the organization to the next step, investing in the clinical trials, investing in manufacturing, because this is, as we discussed, is critical, and then being open, right? So to the dialogue with the industry, with investors, and then, I'm sure that, if the data continues to go to the right direction, the best will happen for Transgene.
Okay, yeah. And then curious specifically to JPM, it's coming next week. What's the main goal there?
The main goal is, to continue the dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. So, with
pharma partners
with the pharma, with the investors, to continue. Of course, now we are not yet in a kind of fundraising mode because we just finished, right? So, but despite that, what is important for us is to continue to discuss, to present Transgene, to enlarge, the exposure of our organization to everyone is interested to hear about Transgene, to meet the leadership team, to understand, our priorities. So that will be for us, essentially the objective of JP Morgan,
Yeah.
right? So,
That's
which is important, right?
Yeah. That's good. And the second side of the question was more personal for you, of like what led you to join Transgene? What was the decision making there?
The individualized therapy. So, I had the opportunity in my journey, right? So, as a physician, as a doctor, hematologist, oncologist, first of all in the hospital, then in large pharmaceutical company, to go through different innovative steps in cancer therapy. So, including up until Novartis and then Gilead, I was involved in the individualized therapy with CAR-T in hematological malignancies. Then, of course, in my brain, in my heart, the next step is really to translate this individualized approach for solid tumor. So when I saw Transgene doing individualized therapeutic approach for solid tumor, I just connected the dots, right? So that this is personally for me as a scientist, a great opportunity to be involved, right? So in a field that can be transformative in solid tumor, as it was and it is in hematological malignancies. So, and then everything related to the biology of somatic mutations. So I had the privilege to work, with Dr. Rosenberg, when I was at Gilead, Novartis Gilead, around all these hypotheses of the importance of the specific somatic mutation in solid tumor. And that's another, translation for me as a scientist in what we are doing, of all the science that Dr. Rosenberg, I saw many years ago, published and he was talking about. So it is for me a profound scientific interest. It is for me as a scientist the opportunity to be involved in what could be potentially the next step for immunotherapy for solid tumor. And it is also an opportunity, to be with people, with my colleagues, to around something that, can be really new, right? So it's very difficult, it's very challenging, it's labor intense. I would say the journey is not straightforward, right? So, but what I say to my team, right? So we're guided by science, we're guided by data, and we have to be able, to change the trajectory accordingly, because that's the way we operate in the biotech, right?
And how attractive was it for you to come from Gilead, from a big organization, and more like running a smaller organization?
It's different, right? So, I mean, at Gilead and Novartis, I was the head of, oncology development, right? So, I mean, at Novartis, my team had around 2,000 people more, right? So, but, at Gilead, 500, 600, right? So it's different because as a CEO, you do everything. As a CEO of a biotech company, you are doing everything. You are for the people in your organization, with the people, of course, for the best of patients, right? So, and you kind of, you are exposed, to all problems, issues, and you resolve them together, right? So it's different from being, at Novartis or at Gilead, where actually I was in charge of one function, but I didn't. Of course, I was a member of the executive committee. I saw the other colleagues, but this was not my full direct responsibility. So the beauty of being a CEO in a biotech company that has innovation as a kind of a password, and is a kind of relatively small biotech company. We are 160 persons. Is that you are involved with people, for the innovation on a single day, right? So, and you take the risk and you own your company with your colleagues. I think that's a significant difference, and it's very rewarding, I would say. And I had to say that I'm learning every single day a lot, right? So, finance and manufacturing. And
were you expecting this when you joined?
I wanted something different.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I can tell you, I found it.
Okay.
Right. And of course, there is a risk associated to, but ultimately, the risk is also in a large pharmaceutical company. Right? So, and again, ultimately is what you do, the data that you generate, and then, your ability, right? So, to monitor everything that is happening, and at times, as I say, also to change trajectory, because that's important.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm curious also on your role, because I think at Gilead you were you're quite involved also in the acquisition of Kite.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
How was that? And it was a massive acquisition.
Yeah, this is kind of confidential process.
What you can share, what you can share.
What we share, what is in the public domain, right? So, I joined Gilead, I thought that Gilead needed, something in oncology that was and is transformative as it is what they have done for HIV patients. So they needed, something that, really was innovative, that was able to create a signature for Gilead as an oncology company. And therefore, we discussed a lot, right? So we discussed with the board and the chairman, etc. And we invited, opinion leaders in the CAR-T field, etc. And we assessed the opportunities. And then ultimately we did what we did, and it's in the public domain, right? So, and then the beauty is that, Gilead decided, to keep the Kite organization separated, right? So, and this, I think, was a great decision from the CEO of the company, right? So, because of course, he spoke and he speaks that decision about the importance of this field, the uniqueness of this field of the individualized therapy, and also the operating model that has to be really different from the classic off-the-shelf approach. That's what we were discussing at the beginning of the conversation. So, and then what's going on, and Kite continues to do a good job, and they're thinking about the next step. So we created altogether, an important pillar for Gilead by just also respecting the signature of this company. Right? So that is, as you know, unbelievable. Right?
You must be happy also to see now the sales number. I think what was it? Is 1.5
yes.
billion now annual revenue or something.
Yeah. No, they are doing well, and of course there is always something more to do, right? So, but it was a remarkable experience. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm curious on the let's a bit about European biotech, because I think, there has been, I think it has never been as good as now. Obviously, if you compare to now with China or the US, it's still, the US definitely lagging a bit behind, with China probably on a similar, at least on the fundraising, and a similar trajectory. How do you look at it? From now being a European biotech CEO, how do you look at it?
So I think that the European biotech is not yet at the level that we can be.
Yeah.
So I think there is still work to do, to expose ourselves, to the North American community and investors, and all this kind of dynamics, right? So I think that we are making progresses. There are companies, of course, that they are demonstrating that. But the dream for me, I'm a European, right? So is that the European biotech, can become, very kind of a similar level as the US, and perhaps very soon is going to be also, you mentioned, Chinese biotech. Yeah. Right. So it is about, again, the investment in Europe, and it is about the talent that we have to retain. and it is about ideas that we have to continue to develop. But it's true that the American biotech are still considered kind of a different level, than the European one. And also when you discuss with the investors, and I'm talking about the North American investors, they are still in a kind of, assessing mode, right? So they are not as straightforward as they are for the US company, right? So, so still work to be done. And again, I'm convinced that ultimately the innovation, will make that change, right? So the more we continue to invest in Europe and to innovate, etc., the more, of course, we're going to be kind of a similar level as the US biotech, and perhaps tomorrow the Chinese biotech, which is a different story, by the way. It's a different story. Yeah.
Okay. And how much for you because you said you wanted like approval in Europe, but I guess a big part of your market is also more in the US, in terms of reimbursement, etc.
Yeah, I mean, we plan to have a pivotal trial in North America and Europe. So it's going to be an international trial. So, and we have already initiated a discussion with the health authorities in Europe and United States of America, specifically related to manufacturing. Right? So, our objective really is to have US, Canada, North America, and Europe involved in the large phase 3 trial in order to give the opportunity to Myvac, TG4050, ultimately to be approved, in both sides of the Atlantic.
And I'm curious on the Europe still, because being in Strasbourg, you are basically on the border with Germany and quite in the central, and
Switzerland, Germany,
and Basel is 1 hour train from Basel. How does it help you in terms of, especially in terms of talents?
It helps significantly, right? So we have, we have talents coming not from Germany and from Switzerland in our leadership team. Actually we have, 2 executive members coming from Switzerland, right? So. Then I'm Italian, right? So, but that is not very, very useful, right? So, and also we have other talents not in the executive committee coming from different parts of Europe. So we are more and more expanding our search to the European Union, right? So, and it's very feasible to work from Strasbourg and then going back for the weekend. Doing back and forward. So that's something that is doable.
That's good. Yeah. I like that. The last question, a bit more personal, and then more like a quick question. But the last question, I think you're on the board of BeOne or BeGene as well.
Yes.
Not BeGene, now BeOne.
BeOne.
Just curious on how is this going? I feel like the company is growing pretty strong.
BeOne is a fantastic company, right? So, of course, the focus at the beginning in China, right? So, was very important for the company, right? So, and nobody knew at that time, that China, was so important, right? So, but they saw, the funders, saw that opportunities, and what is impressive is the significant growth in a very, very limited time period, right? So, and the focus, right? So at the beginning on the innovation, in hematological malignancies, and then, they're expanding also to solid tumors. So it's really, for me, it is a remarkable experience. And, to be the witness of people working in this company, able to make great things for the community, innovating a lot for patients, and remaining focused, on oncology. So they are establishing themselves as a very important company in the oncology field, right? So a lot of dynamics, a lot of new ideas. I mean, it's a lot of confidential information that I cannot disclose. Right? So, but this kind of model that started from China, then went to the United States of America, Europe, and all the other countries by keeping China as an important source of innovation. Because if you go to China to their resource center, you should see what they have. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? So it's a kind of unique model. So they are kind of saying to us that it's not only about the United States of America. It is also about other continents or other countries that can deliver innovation, for patients. Yeah. And that's the big message from BeOne, right? So, I mean,
yeah. Maybe on side note to that one, because I guess being on the board also gave you quite a good exposure to what's going on with the Chinese biotech.
Totally.
We could talk about it forever. But is there one or two things that really struck you, or like that you?
I mean, I think that I come from an experience in education that is a European one, right? So, and then I had the chance to spend 20 years in the United States of America. Yeah. So, therefore, I see. I saw and I see the dynamics. I saw for in Europe, in the United States of America, and the type of innovation, etc. And when I see China now being so focused, so quick, so clever, I'm just asking myself, whether they actually represent a very important part of the ecosystem. The speed is what impressed me a lot. Yeah. So speed in terms of ideas, in terms of implementing those ideas, speed in terms of doing things in parallel to assess different hypotheses, and then finding the right one to advance significantly. The commitment of people is also very interesting, right? So, and also the number of scientists that they have. I mean, I can tell you it's kind of impressive. So the bottom line is that I think that China will be more and more part of the innovation ecosystem. They will generate more and more new ideas and new biotech companies, and they will, be in the equation ultimately, right? So, of the competition, for innovation. So that's what I think, right? So,
that's good. I'm looking at it closely, obviously, as observer, but my wife is also Chinese and worked in biotech, but I also kind of see it a bit from inside as well. Yeah. And actually, also, I guess you've seen it with Gilead, or with Kite, with what was the CAR-T came from Legend, was J&J. I have a blank on the name, but I guess you saw it. You saw the innovation coming from China quite early on.
Legend.
Legend. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
And it's basically the success with BeOne is probably one of the biggest success stories coming from China. I guess you saw it even earlier on.
I mean, BeOne is a story of starting from China and then being present in the rest of the world. Right? So by keeping China as a kind of source of innovation. Yeah. So that's a unique story because Legend is different, right? So they found the partner and they didn't do this type of expansion, right? So, I mean,
not from the same model, but I mean from a success.
From a success, of course, yes, and innovation and what they did, of course, for CAR-T and of course.
Okay, cool. So now moving to a more quick fire, so it's more like quick questions, quick answers. is the biotech winter ending?
I mean, I think that biotech has never been in the winter.
Okay.
I think that the economy has been in the winter, right? So, and I think that innovation, will just address all seasons of the year, right? So, I mean, that's what I believe, right? So, I mean, there was some skepticism, around, significantly investing in biotech, and specifically, based on preclinical data, not yet a kind of fully fleshed data. Right? There was, and that's still present, right? So investors more and more prefer to see clinical data and also to see a clear path, right? So to catalyst and potentially to registration. So you can call that a winter. I call just an attitude, a preference, right? So, but there is always what I see anyway today. There is a kind of profound interest from investors on innovation in biotech, right? So the door is open. They smile. They ask questions. So, I mean, they are interested. Then it's up to us to convince them, right? So, I mean, and there will be periods that are kind of winter, but for me, it's not a winter, right? So, right.
Actually, it's good transition to the second question. What's the most common misconceptions that investors have about cancer vaccines?
That actually they have never worked. So that's what they say to us, right? They say to me, right? So, and the way that I answer is that our approach now is totally different. In other words, the target is a specific individualized target that is a significant difference from what has been done in the past. So, yeah.
Do you think personalized cancer vaccine will be the next blockbuster?
I think that if
next blockbuster,
if the data continues to go to the right direction as it is today, the answer is yes.
Who is one of your biotech heroes or mentors?
So it's, it's my former head of, mentors. I don't have a mentor to go to and to speak on a regular basis. So that's, but, it's the kind of person that, has been, my boss for many years at Novartis, right? So, and when I have some, decision to be made, right, that are difficult, I think about him. I think how he did it in a different situation, but still very challenging as I'm facing, right? So, and I just try to, to follow his example, and of course putting also something on me, right? So because I'm different, but I think that's one person at Novartis, and then the second one that is always with me, and she was my first boss when I was in, I started my career in pharmaceutical companies, and really, she mentored me in everything I was doing, from the hospital to pharmaceutical companies, and her presence is with me every time I make a decision. I see her, so these are the two persons perhaps that have significantly impacted, my professional life and the way I am today, right? So as a manager, as a leader, as a scientist.
Last one advice to 40 years old Alessandro.
40 years old, the advice is to always believe that there is something more to do, always. And there is something better to do, not for yourself, for the community, for your people that works with you. and that you are not the end of yourself. I mean, above and beyond you, there is the medical need, there are patients. That you are just a drop, in this big ocean, but that drop may be profoundly impactful. So, and therefore, I mean, I would say to that person, keep going.
Yeah. Cool. Love it. Thanks, Alessandro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
I'm impressed by how Alessandro reshaped Transgene. I'm also impressed by how much he focuses on patients and how much he believes in European biotech. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like, follow, review button. Any of this action would help a lot more people discover the podcast. If you want to see similar videos, please feel free to check out our channel, where we have many more. I would also love to hear what you think. So if you could, drop a comment wherever you are, or shoot me an email at philip@Flot.bio. That's PHILIP@FLOT.bio. Thanks a lot for watching to the end, and see you in the next episode.